Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk bugle, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's bugle 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I
button?
thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by Mountain Ops, making outdoor energy and performance nutrition to make you a stronger and healthier elk hunter. They have a full line of hunting-related supplements, including meal replacement shakes, multivitamins, pre-workout fuel, and post-workout recovery. And my favorite, their new performance protein bars that, by the way, are packed with 270 calories and 20 grams of protein, but contain less than 6 grams of sugar. Visit mountainops.com to learn more and to order, and be sure to use the promo code ELKTALK to save on your next order.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
And we have a promo code for Gerber as well. Just use the code ELKTALK to save 20% on your orders at gerbergear.com. And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or BuglingBull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
Lastly, the University of Elk Hunting online course is a proud partner of the Elk Talk Podcast. And within the University of Elk Hunting online course, you're going to find nearly 60 chapters organized in 17 modules of elk hunting instruction aimed at making you a more successful elk hunter. From planning and e-scouting to calling strategies and packing, every imaginable elk hunting topic is included in the online course. And regardless of your previous elk hunting experience or success, I'm confident the University of Elk Hunting online course will make you a more confident, more successful elk hunter. Just visit elk101.com and use the promo code ELKTALK to save 20% when you sign up for a membership to the University of Elk Hunting online course.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Good morning, Corey.
Good morning, Randy.
How's life in Idaho?
Well, I made it back to Idaho from Nevada, and I'll have to say, weather has been crazy this spring. We're getting, it's May.
I thought Nevada is nothing but sunshine and road runners.
Oh my goodness! No, we got snow 2 of the 4 days we were there, and rain and wind the other 2 days we were there, and it was miserable.
So is it safe to say you were somewhere north of Vegas then?
Yes. We're somewhere north of Vegas. I think. I don't know the map really well, but it seems like Vegas is pretty far south.
You weren't there gambling or anything? What were you doing? Shed hunting?
No, we were gambling. We were,
really?
Yeah, we were gambling on finding a shed. And that's what it's become in Nevada anymore. They instituted a shed hunting season, I think 3 years ago. Okay. And now it's definitely a gamble if you wait until the season opens whether or not you're going to find one, because there is more antler poaching going on in Nevada than anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang. That's annoying. You know, it kind of reminds me of like travel restrictions on the forest. It works great until it doesn't work great, right?
It works great for the law-abiding people, but it works even better for those that don't.
And as quick as the first one or two people do it, the rest of the people are like, well, hell, you know, if I live by the law here, I'm going to end up with an empty sack. I'm going to go do it. Yeah.
Totally. No, there were more ATV tracks, off-trail, off-road, running up and down ridges from 4 to 6 weeks ago than there used to be when there was no season.
Really?
So I think you have all the people who are breaking the season rule out there going, if I'm going to break the season rule, I might as well break the travel rules, and who knows what else they're doing out there.
You know, it's funny. Montana, we had a certain elk unit that they put on a limited entry draw, and it was an unlimited tag. They're like, well, there's not a lot of elk there. So, but we should protect them by just saying, all right, that's where you got to hunt if you draw the tag. Well, it got more hunting pressure just because it became limited entry than back when it was a general unit. So they got rid of it and made it a general unit again. There's just something about people saying, well, it must be good if they got to have a season on shed antler hunting, then there must be, some reason to go do it. So I'm going to go do it.
Yep. Now, I think when there was no season, everyone was out there and they were patrolling each other. I mean, you aren't going to take a ATV off-road 4 miles and go way back in somewhere if there's a chance somebody else is going to be up in there hiking. But now they're like, hey, nobody's out here because there's a season and it's closed right now, so we're by ourselves. So I think they're doing more damage with the season than they were without it.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm glad you're doing that kind of stuff, because while you were there, I was in Minnesota with my buddies, and there was a serious beaver depletion going on. Not that the audience probably wants to know, but I grew up beaver trapping, and in Minnesota they have a spring season. And it's so much fun. Oh, it's right up there. Not quite with shooting grouse, but pretty close.
Oh, man. Get you around a beaver pond during elk season, and we'd never find a bugle.
No. So we caught 53 beaver in 4.5 days.
Wow.
So, yeah. The downside of catching 53 beaver is then you got 53 beaver.
Yeah. That's a lot of skinning.
Yeah, my hands were the first night, me and Dick and Wally, I think we skinned 6 of them the first day. And we kind of had a little bit of an assembly line going there. I was doing the rough skin and Dick was doing the fleshing, and Wally was tacking them on the boards. And I'm really getting soft, Corey. The next day I woke up, my hands just ached from all the grabbing and pulling. And it's like, Randy, you are definitely an accountant, man. You can't even skin 6 beaver without your hands hurting. But,
so you've eaten wolf, I know.
Yep.
What's beaver like?
Really good.
I've heard that.
We cooked 6 of them. Big Falls, Minnesota is a town of 220 people, so we put out the invite, hey, come down to Dick's house, and he had a literal full house of people. Our buddy Sean, who is the mayor, he grilled and smoked some of it on his Traeger. And then we did Hank Shaw's barbacoa recipe on one big batch of it. And then we did just like a traditional pot roast on another batch of it. And it got a lot of thumbs up. Everybody's like, you could tell the first bite they were like, had this look on their face of, I can't believe I'm going to eat a rodent. And then after they ate it, they're like, whoa, This is really good.
What's it taste like?
It's a really mild meat. It's kind of stringy, like bear meat, as far as texture, but as far as flavor and taste, it's got that really mild, sweet taste, almost like pronghorn does. So,
red meat.
Yeah. So,
any concerns with making sure it's cooked well, like with a dog or a cat?
Yeah, you do. I mean, beaver don't get much of the gnosis, trichinosis, endocrinosis, that stuff, but they get tularemia. And so you just, first of all, when you're skinning them, if you saw a bunch of tumors, you'd be like, that one's going out to the ravens. But no, it's really not a big issue with the waterborne rodents like that. But you catch a bunch of these 40, 45 pound beaver and you got an awful lot of beaver meat in a hurry.
Man, the Randy and Corey rabbit holes. Here we go. This is an elk hunting podcast, and we just gave a full discourse on beaver trapping and cooking.
Yeah. Between isn't this supposed to be about elk hunting, not antler collecting,
not
and beaver
shed
trapping?
hunting? Yeah.
So, all right. Well, when you go through all of our emails, like I did the last couple hours, you can tell that some of the tag results have been issued.
Yep.
And just based on those emails, I can tell that New Mexico has already released its drought results. Because the number of people who emailed us and said, hey, I drew, they usually don't give a specific unit. They'll just say, I drew the Gila, or I drew someplace in New Mexico. And then they have a series of questions about it. And
usually starts with, where should I go? What drainage should I hunt in? Can you send me a pin? Have you been there before?
A couple of them are like that. Fortunately, I think we've warned our audience enough of them that we don't see any value in giving coordinates or pins, because where they were in the year that pin was there may not be where they're at this year because of a drought or because of a heavy monsoon, or maybe this was where they were in September in the first archery season. Well, guess what? If you drew the late October post-rut rifle hunt, they're not going to be there. So I guess that's why we focus more on understanding elk behavior and how they use the landscape, and less on this drainage or this basin or this creek or this peak or whatever.
No, if we sent a pin to somebody and said, right here, this is where the elk are, based on our research or based on our experience, they're going to go there and like you said, if there's a drought, if there's hunting pressure, all these different things, are going to go there and not see anything, and then they're going to think Newberg's a liar.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. I'm full of BS anyhow, so I can't believe anyone would plan a hunt around my advice.
But no, I think you touched on something there. Understanding elk behavior, whether it's calling, whether it's feed sources, whether it's migration, whatever it is, with us sharing what we know about that, our hope is that the listeners can take that and apply it to their own research and their own e-scouting and find their own area that they're going to be able to adjust. They're going to know, hey, this is based on what I'm looking for, but I got here and now there's no water. So I've got to adjust and go find water. Or there's a bunch of hunting pressure here. I've got to find where the elk are going to go when they're getting pushed away from it, rather than drive to a pin, get out and walk around and realize there's no elk here. Now what do? I need somebody to send me another pin to go check, instead of knowing what to do and how to find them.
Yeah, and there's so much great stuff out there. I'm really nerding out on elk forage in the last 6 months, and the last couple of weeks I've been putting together this script that I'm redoing my e-scouting videos. It's going to be way deeper dive on certain things, and I always talk about the 5 calendars or 5 periods of the elk calendar, and the first 3, the early season, pre-rut, and peak rut, are mostly influenced by forage and food, just because in the pre-rut and peak rut, you're looking for cows. Well, cows attract bulls. That's why you're looking for cows. And they're driven by food. And the more I dive into this, Corey, I feel like I started from almost a zero place about my knowledge and understanding of elk movements based on food, forage availability, and the energy requirements that cow elk have. And a guy from your state did some really cool studies. He's at the University of Idaho about thermal regulation, i.e. staying cooler or staying warm, depending on the temperature. And he compared two elk herds, one in the northeast corner of Oregon, up in that Blue Mountain country there,
Yep.
and then one of your desert herds down near Arco, down in the desert. And they collared them, they examined their behaviors, how they thermal regulated at different times of the year. And your desert elk, and this then holds true to studies I'm reading about New Mexico, your desert elk spend more energy thermal regulating in the summer, or as much as the winter elk in the mountainous country of northeast Oregon spend in the winter.
Wow.
And here's what complicates it for those cow elk in the summertime. This is another thing, and this is true across all studies, is that I'm going to use a base number of kilocalories. It's a measurement of energy. I think a kilocalorie is the amount of energy that raises 1 kilogram of water 1 degree Celsius or something like that. But anyhow, it's kind of like
you're going all engineering on us here.
Yeah, I know, but it's a measurement of stored fat, right? It's fat converts to energy. Well, let's take a 500-pound cow elk. And if I might be slightly off in these numbers because I'm not recalling it super precisely, but she uses 6,000 kilocalories per day to maintain, just to stay at where she is. During gestation, she has to add 15% to that for the whole period of gestation. Then you would think, okay, she has this calf. Now she doesn't have to worry about feeding this calf inside her. During lactation, her energy demand goes up by 70%.
Wow.
During the period of lactation. So you get these cow elk in these hot environments, and what they have found is they seek shade and thermal regulation during the daytime more than they do forage. And so sometimes their shade is very far from the forage. So the locomotion, the term that the biologists use, the actual act of moving back and forth, is another net drain on the energy buildup of these cow elk. So you add, all right, they're trying to stay cool. It's the environmental conditions make that hard. Radiant sun, besides just ambient temperature, radiant sun is super, super hard on them. And that's why they go to the little shaded thing, and why we always talk about in hot periods, right? North, northeast, northwest slopes. Yeah. So she's got that. She's now got a lactating calf that's demanding 70% more energy from her. And all the studies, whether from Yellowstone, from Arizona, from Nevada, from Colorado, say that a cow elk that has 10 to 15% body fat by September, again, by the time the next breeding cycle comes, has a 90+% chance of being pregnant. If she has less than 10%, the chance of being pregnant goes way down. So you think about, here's this cow elk. She's got all these demands. And on top of that, she's got to find enough forage to regain 10 to 15% of her, another 50 to 70 pounds of body fat in order to be healthy enough to go
be
through
bred,
this whole thing.
And then to make it through the winter with a gestation period of the length that they have. What is a gestation period? Is it about 8 months?
About 250 days, yep. Pretty much every study is 250 days plus minus, a couple days. So there's all these studies like A/B tests between migratory and non-migratory elk. And I don't know if the scientists really decided to do it of migratory and non-migratory. I think they just picked two different environments and climates. But it just happens that these desert and warm country elk are, for the most part, non-migratory. So then you look at, why does a cow elk decide to winter somewhere 50 miles away? Go through all the risks of migrating, predation risk, human risk of getting run over, all this stuff to get to some mountainous area. And they look at it, and it's just a function of the quality of the forage in those mountain environments. And this, again, now this nerds out on, is it forb, shrubs, or grasses? Those are the three categories that elk move back and forth from as far as what they prefer. Well, the forbs are the greatest protein, the greatest nutrition, the greatest everything per volume of digestible food. And the mountain environments provide forbs in May and June in high doses. So these cow elk are making this assessment that it's better for me to expose myself to all those risks, travel 50 miles, and spend the winter or the summer up there than it is to try and make a living down here in the warm country. And so the idea of why I'm going through all this is people are going to be so tired of charts and graphs. Gets back to your point that every year, as conditions change, as moisture changes, as invasive plant species impact the landscape, if an allotment's being grazed by cattle or not grazed by cattle, every one of those affect where the cow elk are going to be, because they are in such intensive effort to increase body fat and the demands of lactation that they have to be where the absolute best forage is on the landscape. So our job as hunters is to know that, to understand that, to see how it plays out on whatever landscape we're hunting, and say, all right, here's where the best forage is going to be. That's where the cow elk are going to be. And guess what? That's where the bulls are going to be on September 12th.
Yep. So. Well, and that's interesting because, I think it's, at least for me, I've always looked at grass. Man, there's so much just lush green grass here. Why wouldn't an elk be here? And, I didn't realize that forbs were much higher in protein and caloric intake for them. And if there's all this lush green grass, well, just up the ridge, there might be all of these forbs that are providing more nutrition for them, and they're leaving that grass alone because it's not the most desirable at that time. So that's very, very insightful and helpful.
Yeah. And then, you take certain areas where there are not a lot of grasses in the fall. They have to switch over to more shrubbery, more browsing. And in some of these populations, the amount of juniper that elk eat is crazy.
Really?
Nevada wintering elk in some of their populations eat a ton of juniper and juniper berries. And another shrub would be sage and other things like that. They prefer grasses if they can find them. Yep. But where you were shed hunting in Nevada's not known as, amber waves of green. So
no, I don't remember seeing anything green out there. It was all brown.
Yeah. And then you go to Unit 10, Unit 9 in Arizona, and their preferred wintering forage is cliff rose, which again is a browse. Because there's some places where there are grasses, but you get snow at that elevation up on the Mogollon Rim there. And so a lot of the grasses are covered, so they drift off slightly. And there's this elevation band that grows a lot of cliff rose. And that makes up a huge part of their diet in those late November, December hunts. If it's a early winter, you're going to see them in there. So it's
I'm trying to make sense of it so that people don't just say, Newberg, you're boring me to tears. Click, change the channel. I'm going to go watch Oprah reruns or something. But
well, I think anybody that is truly interested in maximizing their efficiency as a hunter, as an elk hunter, is going to eat this up. I mean, I'm sitting here nerding out on what you're saying just because I've not done that deep of a dive before. I mean, I know they need feed, and I look around and say, hey, everything's dry in here. There is no feed. I need to go find something, where there's going to be more feed, but not at that level of understanding the difference between grasses and forbs and shrubs and browse and all of that, and understanding different times of year. Shed hunting in the early spring, I'm out there and I'm seeing all these willows and everything that are just munched off they're all just squared off on the ends. And it's like, why are there can't be a whole lot of nutrition in that, but that's the only nutrition that's out there during the winters.
Exactly. They got to utilize what the landscape provides them. And so they look at all that and say, well, the cupboard's pretty bare right now, but these willows, these aspen buds, certain types of browse are better than trying to dig through the snow and find some old dried out grasses. Because this is the other part that I'm going to be nerding out on is survival for an elk is obtaining and retaining more calories than what's expended, wasted, or burned.
Yep.
So if you got to go dig through a ton of snow to get, 1,000 kilocalories, but it took you 1,500 kilocalories to dig through that snow and to walk over to where those grasses were,
it's a net
you're
loss.
going backwards.
Yeah.
You would have been better off to just stay there and bed down all day.
Yep.
So
we had some mule deer winter kill here several years ago that amazed me. We had an early spring, everything greened up, and I'm driving up this canyon going up to where we're going to shed hunt, and there are dead mule deer laying all over along the road, like 30 of them.
Whoa.
And so I actually called the biologist when I got back. I'm like, hey, there's something going on up there. And he said, yeah, we had an early spring and all of these grasses popped up and there was absolutely no nutritional value in them. And the deer went and ate them and expended more energy digesting that food that they were eating than what they were getting out of it, and literally starved themselves to death by eating non-nutritional food.
Yeah. No,
and he said, they had a hard, long winter before that, and they'd used up all of their reserves, and they were down to the last little bit of fat, and they burned that up, eating that grass, and didn't replenish it, and ended up dying.
Yeah, I think when I get done with these charts, so I'm going to graph one line of what the nutritional demands are for a lactating cow elk through, say, September 1st. And then, okay, here's how much the landscape has to provide for them to add 10% of body fat. Well, in a drought, they're likely not able to add that 10%. So here's this amplification of what drought causes in productivity of elk herds. Then they go into this later season, and if they have a hard winter in the northern latitudes, you're going to lose a lot of your calves. You're going to lose a lot of, they're going to abort a lot of the fetuses. And so drought is really this amplification thing that is being identified in all my research that I didn't give enough credit to. And I'm not just talking drought in an arid place like Nevada or Arizona. I'm talking about drought in the northern Rockies and places like that.
Where the food's just not as lush and as nutritious because it doesn't have enough moisture content. And then you take that, you're in, say, the state of Idaho. You've got a really dry summer, so the food's not as nutritious. Then they go into the fall, and, they have an early winter. Snow hits early, and so they're having to expend more energy to find any food that's, again, still not as nutritious. Then they have a deep snow, and you throw in a pack of wolves that's chasing them up and down the mountain. They're expending 400% more energy than they would if they weren't being chased up and down the mountain. Then they come out of that and they have a really wet spring where things aren't greening up until the sun starts coming out later. And it's a recipe for disaster. You've got, like you said, the first thing a cow's going to do, if she doesn't have enough nutrition during the winter, she's not just going to keel over and die. She's going to get rid of that extra 15% demand and abort that fetus. But then she's already sitting on the border, and if she can't maintain that or fill that, she's going to die. And that's just you look at, they have a 70% increase in needs you'd mentioned during the time that they're lactating, which is June 1st through September 1st. They have a 15% increase during the gestation period, which is October something through June 1st. Yeah. So they basically have the month of September where they have a normal feed habit, where they have just normal baseline. Everything else is increased.
Yeah, that's where they try to build that 10 or 15% body fat. And so that's why that window of time,
which is when you're wanting to find the bulls, you find the most nutritious food source on the landscape, you're going to find the cows, and that's where the bulls are going to be.
That's the path I'm hoping to follow people down. And then, some of the tools we've been working on with GoHunt for their mapping system, their terrain analysis tool, it's like, okay, here's where those types of premium foods will be found based on slope orientation, based on other stuff. Hopefully, you then have the knowledge and you have the tools so you can adapt to whatever conditions are going to be there during the time you're hunting. Because you're not worried about where the elk are in June or July. You're worried about where are they on the day I'm hunting, not last week, not 2 weeks ago, not next week, but today. So, and hopefully when I'm all done and that goes out in July, it won't be 3 months of
just I already can't wait to
keyboard time.
I can't wait to get my hands on it.
So anyhow, that's part of the reason I know you and I have both been pushing GoHunt on some of these map applications like the terrain tool, and there's some other ones that I've been pushing them on that they'll be coming I think a little later this year. But and the other part, they just came out with their Explorer package of maps, which is all 50 states. I think all 50 will be ready by the time this podcast drops. You get that for $49.
$49 a year, all the states. You get the terrain analysis, all the mapping features, the mobile app, take it out in the field. There's some cool stuff coming on the app too that we've been really pushing for. And
I bet you when they get an email or a phone call from us, Corey, they're like, "Oh no, not these guys again." But so far I haven't felt that.
No, Mike especially has been super grateful for the feedback and.
Yeah. So this whole dive I'm doing, the next part of the series is going to be kind of a similar dive about sanctuaries and what creates sanctuaries and boundaries, and really a sanctuary being low hunting pressure areas surrounded or adjacent to high hunting pressure areas. So what creates those low hunting pressure areas? I'll be doing a similar nerding out for that. So. But I think that gets to a question. John sent us an email. He's drawn a tag this year, and he said, "Hey, you guys do all these videos. You talk about don't bother them with this, don't bother them with that." And I know we've covered it before, but his question was more of, what should I ask the biologist? And what's not going to be a waste of their time, a waste of my time, and an annoyance. I guess for me, I always say do your own homework first.
Yeah.
If you call up and say, "Hey, I drew tag whatever for the first rifle hunt, where would I go?" They're going to send you to the same place they sent the other 43 people who called.
Yep. No, and that's, I can remember Arizona. The first time I drew Arizona, I jumped on their website, and they have, say you're hunting Unit 9 in Arizona. They say right on the website, concentrations of elk around this tank, around this mountain, around here. And that's the generic response. That's just, okay, this will get you into the right area, and there's going to be elk there. But that's that's listed on their website where everybody's going to go and find that. And if you call up a biologist on the day the draws come out and say, "Where should I go? I drew Unit 9, he's going to read you word for word off of the website. "Well, there's elk up on this mountain. You can find them around this tank." You call him up and say, hey, I know these are some of the general areas. I read that on the website, but I've been looking at these 3 areas especially. There's a trailhead here. It looks like I can get into some remote country, and there's a couple tanks back in there. Have you spent any time back in there? Do the elk get pushed into there when there's pressure? I mean, the more specific you can be and let him know, I know this area. I have researched it. I've used common sense to find areas, this information you're talking about for feed. Hey, I know elk are going to be feeding on this in September. Is there much of that back in this area? What do you see? Where are the elk going to find that premier feed source right now? Don't call them up and say, where should I go? Because they're going to tell you the same thing they tell all 225 other tag holders, and you're all going to end up at the exact same parking lot.
Bring your own rock to stand on.
So for me, when I call a biologist, those are the things I'm asking. Plus, objectives. What's your objective in this unit? Are you over or under objective as far as populations, bull to cow ratios, things like that? What do you see the peak rut in there? Because the peak rut in Unit 9 in Arizona might be way different than in an over-the-counter tag in Northwest Montana. And so they're going to be able to have that kind of information that's going to help you decide where to go. Don't ever call a biologist and ask them where to go. Call them, grill them for information that's going to help you make a better decision.
Yeah, and as more of the tag results come out, I think, we get Utah next week. Not that any of us are going to be lucky enough to draw Utah, but it'll come out. The week after that, on May 20th, we get Nevada. Again, probably none of us are going to be lucky enough to draw that. But then the last week of the month, we'll get Colorado. That's a ton of elk hunters there. They host more non-resident elk hunters. Oh, and I think if I remember right,
Wyoming.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I forgot. Our money for the last 6 months.
I forgot. I think they're like May 18th or 19th, something like that. So, the other, I don't know if I really want to tell the world this. No, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
Not until after the draws are done.
Well, you and I can chat after the podcast because now you got me interested.
Yeah. Well, what it is, it's about,
go and see. You are going to tell them.
I'm going to give some generic advice on this. Go and look and see what the proposed quota recommendations are. Some states let you adjust your application in advance of that. And I can tell you that in Wyoming, there's virtually no change in the quotas. So, but I go and look at those every year because if there was a big change in the quotas, I was applying in unit, A, and hey, they're cutting it by 20%. I'm going to be calling that biologist and say, hey, I see you recommended a 20% cut in the quota. What's going on the landscape? I might go in and change that application to a different unit then.
Yeah.
So, but I can save everybody the pain in the butt that there's hardly any change in the Wyoming quotas. So
this year,
yeah. So that's why I thought, I don't know if it's even worth bothering people with. But I do that occasionally, bother people with completely irrelevant information. But
when you give enough relevant and highly valuable information out, you're entitled to a little bit of fluff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you see the one email we got from the guy that? And I this caught me completely off guard, and he's probably going to hear this and say, well, this is what kind of jerk you're being. He said when you and I claim that we don't know that much, that it's passive arrogance and it's annoying to him.
I did see that.
I'm like, really? I'm just factually stating the more I research, the dumber I feel. And I'm old enough to know how little I know.
Yep.
And so
it's when and you especially, I think you're much more modest about your knowledge level, because I truly don't have a deep knowledge level. Yes, I go out and I understand elk behavior during the month of September. But outside that, I don't have a lot of information. I called you several years ago and said, hey, I'm taking my kids out rifle hunting. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Where do I find elk in rifle season? So I would much rather learn from someone who recognizes that they don't know everything and that they're just as hungry to continue learning as the people they're trying to help along the way than someone who claims to be an expert that doesn't know more. Any more than anyone else. So if it's passive arrogance, I guess that's better than aggressive arrogance. But it's certainly not intended that way. It's to shine a light on the fact that you and I are hungry to learn, and there's still so much to learn, and we'll never quit learning and never have a desire to quit learning.
And that's quite. And I think people feel we're being a little bit tongue in cheek that. When you guys say quote unquote failure, i.e. not feeling a tag, is actually a benefit, I really do feel that way, because the whole drive home for the whole next week, I'm like, where was my head? What was I doing wrong? Why was I not thinking we
beat ourselves up and analyze it over and over.
Yeah. And it just is a further reminder that as quick as you think you know something about wild things and their behaviors, as quick as you start thinking that, they're going to hand you your teeth and thank you for your time. They may not even thank you for your time. But so that was an interesting email, and that's great. We love the feedback. It gives us something to think about for sure.
And there is some tongue in cheek. I mean, every once in a while, it's like, we just got lucky. We don't have a clue what we're doing. We do have a clue what we're doing, but we certainly aren't experts, and we certainly aren't the knowledge base that everybody needs to come to learn everything. That's there's so much I don't know.
I think if people attend any of the live events that we're at, they will hear time and again that, look, we're not the world's best elk hunters. We're lucky that we get to go a lot of places. We're lucky that we get to help on a lot of other hunts and hunt different times of year, different landscapes. And we make a lot of mistakes in the process. That is the only thing that maybe separates us from others. And no matter where we're given a presentation, there is somebody in that local area who has that landscape dialed in, and they kill a big bull every year, and you just don't hear about them.
Yep.
There are a lot of amazing elk hunters out there, and when I bump into one of them, I'm taking a lot of notes. They may not see me scratching anything down on a piece of paper, but every once in a while you bump into one of those locals who got it dialed in, and I got a pretty good memory. I'm like, all right, if I get back to the room, I will be writing down some notes. So those are the real experts of that vicinity and that location, and it's fun to get to interact with them too, because every once in a while you'll bump into one of them who's willing to talk. And then again, it's another one of those events that opens your eyes to how little or how narrow my approach was to elk hunting.
Yep.
And where it's elktalkpodcast.com is where they leave the feedback.
Yep. Send us an email. Let us know if you think that we're passively arrogant or
just arrogant
or just genuinely ignorant.
Hey, I got a question for you. This question entered my mind as I was nerding out on all this forage behavior and forage availability. If you do draw Wyoming, do you prefer to go, because the archery season is September 1st to the 30th. Do you prefer to go early, or do you prefer to go late, or you just go whenever it fits your calendar?
So I have hunted Wyoming now, I believe, 5 or 6 times on the general tag. And we've hunted a couple different areas, and I have never had an opening day that I haven't had an elk bugle. So that's always cool to hunt early, and a lot of times that's what you're up against is you hunt early and you don't get a lot of bugling action. I've hunted Wyoming late, like the last week of the season, and heard thousands of bugles and didn't call in a single elk. And so what I've, in the areas that we hunt there and just the demographics and the terrain and the weather and everything else, I prefer to hunt early. And there's a couple other reasons. They have, some of those units have rifle mule deer hunts that open in the middle of September. So you get more traffic, more people at least going through elk country to get up to the high country. So that can affect it. So I prefer to hunt. If I had to pick just a date range, I would say the 8th through the 15th would probably be ideal, but then you have to look at the moon and some other things there. But that being said, the elk are coming into peak rut and into estrus sometime around the 20th or so. So the 15th through the 22nd can be prime time too. So if I wasn't worried about a rifle elks or a rifle deer season coming in the middle of September, I'd probably be looking at like the 15th through the 22nd, especially this year. But that's going to be the prime week, I think, in my research for a lot of places this year. And I'm hoping to spend my 17 Colorado points this year. And so I'm saving that week for that. So we're going to be going to Wyoming early if we draw Wyoming. So probably sometime around the Labor Day weekend through the 12th or so, somewhere in there.
Okay. And the reason I asked that is one of the studies shows that in alpine environments, or montane environments, as they call it, that in late August, early September, the concentration of quality forage is still dispersed across the landscape. By the end of September, the vegetation is kind of cured, and so it's more of a generic landscape. In other words, the quality of forage is mostly the same everywhere. And it's more concentrated there's still some forbs coming up that in late August, early September. So there are pockets that are super, super high quality forage in late August, early September, more so than there is in late September.
Well, and you've got a couple other factors. I mean, that goes to show, the cows are still all super concentrated during that time. The bulls are starting to stage themselves around the concentration of cows, but they haven't moved in, broken off into individual herds, gone back to that generic feed landscape. So yeah, you can, there's areas you can hunt and run through there with a butterfly net, scooping up elk. They're so concentrated.
Yeah. So that was another thing. It's you read multiple studies, and I've read some of these in years past, but this spring has been my real deep dive into it. And you start putting little bits and pieces together of, maybe that's why I've observed this type of dispersal or this type of concentration or this type of behavior across the landscape. So that's when I was reading that, I'm like, all right, what am I gonna do? Oh, here's another really interesting one. And this gets to thermal regulation. Montane mountain type herds, their susceptibility to thermal regulation in hot temperatures, they are not trained and conditioned to adapt to it as well as lower elevation and desert or arid climate elk. So, right, we get that 85-degree stretch in September, and we say that the rut is, there's no rut. It is just that these elk cannot function, and they know that they are burning serious energy trying to stay cool. And that's why they're going to be on those thickest, nastiest, darkest slopes or deepest canyons or whatever.
And the intensity of the rut is going to be minimized because of that.
At least during the daylight hour. Yeah, it's so. The other part that this is one that, and this is a study done in Yellowstone. It's another study done in Colorado. If they collar all these elk, and there's some way they can tell when they calve, they go there right away, and using the 250-day gestation period, it's crazy what the bell curve looks like in terms of starting in early September and go to late October, where the bell curve peaks for the most pregnancies. So there might be a lot of activity going on prior, but the first 4 days of October, are when most of the conception occurs.
Yep.
That's
awesome.
I was thinking like, no, it's got to be like September 10th through the 20th. So there's a lot of rutting going on there. There's a lot of activity kind of building up to the big event.
Yep.
But then also the variations between altitude and latitude between some of those similar studies. There tries to be this bell curve within each geographic location, and if you talk to the biologists, they'll say that's because it's a evolutionary thing where if you have a big spike of calves hit the ground for a 10-day period, only so much predation can happen in 10 days, whereas if you spread that out over a 30 or 40-day calving period, the wolves, I'll eat another one today and I'll eat another one tomorrow. So they take 30 calves instead of 10 calves in that simple manner. So that's another reason of why evolution has said no matter where their bell curve peaks out, it's a tight band between the number of days after that peak and the number of days before that peak, just to create this big pulse of calves on the ground as a predation, anti-predation mechanism.
Wow. There's so much that goes into all of, you start thinking about feed and predation and thermoregulating and all of these things just to figure out where elk are and what they're going to be doing for a 7-day window in September or October. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. And if there's one thing I gather from all this, it's why I firmly believe elk are never doing anything just for the heck of it.
No.
Everything they are doing every minute of every day is purposeful and with intention.
Yep.
They don't have the luxury. Oh, I forgot to pick up groceries on my way home tonight. I'm going to run back into town. They don't have these human luxuries that we kind of. It's the view that we see the world because it's our daily life. The more you read this stuff and study it and try to connect dots, the more you realize that everything an elk does is for a really good reason.
Yep.
And so.
Very, very, very dissimilar to humans. Which is why success rates are where they are, because we just don't relate to that. It's like every minute of every day they're doing something to stay alive. And we don't do that.
No, I don't anyhow. I do some really stupid things. If I was an elk, I'd be a casualty real quickly. But some of the other things I think that is very interesting is in more arid landscapes, how elk have to, the net intake, how much it's impacted by locomotion or having to move from both from bedding site to the prime feed site, but also across the landscape, because forbs, at the time when forbs, let's say, are really nutritious and they're abundant on the landscape, they're still not very abundant in arid climates. Whereas in mountainous climates, forbs are super abundant in June. So an elk can stand in the same little meadow and eat until its belly's about ready to burst. So their net energy expenditure for locomotion to walk around and find these forbs is close to zero. Whereas the desert elk, he or she's, the net value after all the energy expended to walk around gets to be a whole lot less. Yeah. And how these collared elk have had to move and what their daily patterns are in those environments compared to mountain environments. That's why I focus so much on migratory and non-migratory elk, because their behaviors have to be different based on what the landscape provides them.
Yep.
So I'm done here now.
No, please keep going. We've been here almost an hour, and wow,
you should see the whiteboards in this office right now.
I bet.
We have whiteboards in every room, and I've used them all up pretty much this spring. And I take pictures of them because my biggest fear is the janitor's going to come in here and say, "Oh, I'm going to really do a good job today. I'm going to clean his whiteboard for him." I would come in, I'd be in tears if I saw my whiteboards and all my research. So I've been taking pictures of them in case that happened. But so
that's a lesson learned. That's a lesson learned in failure. Because at some point you had a whiteboard erased, and now you've learned. You've overcome.
I can't remember if I had one erased or I erased somebody else's and got. Hey, I'm going to be a good employee today. I'm going to erase the whiteboard. Boss comes in the next day. All right, who's fired? Who erased my whiteboard? So the reason I throw all this stuff out here, I think, is at this time of year is when people start doing all their research and e-scouting, when tags start coming in over the next month or two, going out to these studies and these research projects, super, super valuable. And they're all available online. It's not like I'm have some inside connection to somebody to find all this stuff. It's really boring reading. You read about 50 pages to get 2 paragraphs that really are worthwhile. The Cliff's Note version is always the abstract, which is the first part of the study. It's like a half page. Here's what we tried to, here was our hypothesis. Here was the conditions. Here were our findings. If nothing else, just read that part. But a lot of good stuff there.
It sounds like here in the next couple of months, we're going to have the consolidated Cliff Notes of the entire research available to us. Thanks to Randy Newberg.
It won't all be available. I'm trying to weed out what of this is actually relevant to someone doing e-scouting and researching, and what is just going to be like static on a radio dial. And that's the hard part because I'm such a nerd on this stuff. I think it's all relevant, but I know what the audience will say. Newberg, spare me the details, man. So.
Can you just send me a pin to where I'm going to find the elk?
Yeah, maybe that's what we ought to do. Just start sending people. Okay, here's a pin. We'll send you a GoHunt pin right here. Hey, go right there. Yep. and then they'd have something to blame it on. Hey, I listened to Newberg or Corey. That was a stupid idea. Don't listen to those guys. But so other than that, I'm just waiting for the draw results to come out because I don't think I'm going to draw much this year.
Really?
I didn't draw.
I'm counting on it. I'm counting, based on points and all the research I did. My GoHunt Insider got abused this year.
Yeah.
Just you get that many points, and it's so hard to try to decide what to do and where to go, and your options are so limited. But at the same time, just having 2 options and where to spend 17 points. I mean, that's an investment. I've been 17 years. I've been applying or building points so that I can apply, and now it's here. I get 7 or 8 days to go and get it done, and then it's gone, and I never get that chance again in my life. So it's there's a lot of stress and a lot of research that goes into that. But I'm counting on Wyoming the first half, first part of the season, and then Colorado the second part, and then we'll probably, if both of those happen, we'll probably end up just getting an over-the-counter rifle tag in Idaho and going somewhere cool in the backcountry, hopefully with llamas.
Yeah. Well, I'm counting on my Montana tag. I already have it. It's a general tag.
You can count on that.
I do think that we'll draw the general Wyoming tag this year, based on the points that we have. Me and Bo and my buddy Mike Spitzer. And I won't draw Wyoming or Utah. I only did points in Colorado because my schedule's so messed up. I didn't draw Arizona. I didn't draw New Mexico. I don't even think I applied in New Mexico because of my messed up calendar. I got all these sweepstakes hunters I've committed to that I got to take. So I got to get.
I was going to say, why's your schedule messed up? Because you didn't draw a moose tag and a goat tag and sheep tag and an ibex tag and whatever else you drew in one year.
Yeah. No, I got two really great guys lined up that won the RMEF. RMEF does a win a hunt with Randy every year. And I got two of them. Well, one guy didn't draw last year. So we rolled them into this year. So I want to get both of those done. And, so yeah, it's just, and then I promised my niece I was going to take her hunting. So I got her on the books to go hunting. That's my graduation present to all my nieces and nephews.
Oh, very cool.
They get to go hunting with me for a week. And I always feel that that's more quality time than me showing up at a graduation as one of 300 people and, go through the greeting line and, hear Grandpa tell the same story he was telling 20 years ago. So, so that's why I don't have big plans for myself this year, but I do for other people. I got a lot of friends who they're like, hey, if I draw, you want to come with? Ooh, yeah, please. Have llamas, we'll travel.
Didn't you say, it seems like you're going to cook for me somewhere. Was that, we had a discussion about that, didn't we?
Yeah, I offered I would be your camp cook if you needed it, but you've not let,
I'm waiting for draw results. I don't want to line up a cook before I draw a tag. I mean, that's getting that's getting the cart in front of the horse there.
That's kind of like the old saying, you talk about the quality of your shooting after the hunt, not before the hunt.
Exactly. Every person I've ever hunted with that brags about how good of a shot they are inevitably misses at 200 yards. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, that is one of those things that it's not marriage advice that I normally give, but it's kind of just, good hunting advice. Brag about your shooting after the hunt, not before the hunt. So maybe that's what you're doing there. You're kind of holding out on me. You don't want me to know what unit you might be applying for.
Well, just, increasing my odds if I don't draw this year. So.
Yeah, Uncle Larry drew Arizona elk, but he's an Arizona resident, so that'll be fun. He drew a really good unit, and he's always such a blast. I have so much fun with him. He's going to be 76 years old, 12 years of experimental chemo. He has due to neuropathy, he has no feeling left in his toes and his feet. So he stumbles and falls. You'd swear he's drunk when he's out there, though. I give him trekking poles because not just to make it easier, to take some weight off him. It's so that he doesn't fall and hurt himself.
Is that? I'm guessing that's a rifle hunt. Is it early rifle?
Yeah. No, it's late rifle. It starts the day after Thanksgiving. So
fun.
I'll be down doing that. That's I think for both of us, this time with our family and our dear friends out in the hills are the real treasures and pleasures of the hunting we do. And
it is, and that's it's so many people, message and email both you and I and say, hey, what would it take to hunt with you? Can I hunt with you? And realistically, there's just so little time. And I've got 3 kiddos that are in the prime of learning to hunt and wanting still to spend time with dad. And I've got to spend any spare time I have. I've got to make time for them. And I do 2 hunts in September and try to do 1 in October and November. And that's it for me. And then everything else, we've got our outfitters for hope hunt and then hunting with my kids and, Donnie making sure that he, if he breaks his leg, he's got somebody to pack him up a mountain to get close to an elk. And so, it's just so, I would love to hunt with, I have really, really good friends that I've never hunted with. You and I haven't got to hunt together for a few years. And there's just so little time that, it's a treasured time to be able to do that with good friends and family.
Yeah. So you see how many people are asking what you're doing with Destination Elk this year?
Yeah, there's been a few.
A few, yeah, right. When are you going to let the world know what you're doing with Destination Elk?
I think once we know.
Well, anyone who hasn't watched it, they should go watch it. You work your butt off. I can't even imagine how much complication you had with coordinating all that, and then John having to go through all that footage. Oh my gosh! Oof.
Yeah. I think for me, it's part of my nerdy nature. The engineering, I've got spreadsheets and everything. So everything, planning it up front. Of course, it never goes according to plan, but at least having a really detailed plan in the beginning helped that. And then working with the people we got to work with, people like you and Bo Beatty and Tyler and Lenny from Pure Elevation and the Angry Spike guys and the Scousins and just, everybody that was a part of that made it a bunch of fun. They wanted to be involved. They wanted to do all they could to make it successful. And so it wasn't just, me sitting here making a project work. It was everybody participating in it. And then, like you mentioned, John, the effort that he put in to have to go through that. You don't understand. I mean, you understand, but most people don't understand when you go out and film a hunt for 7 days and you come back, you have hard drives filled with footage and you've got to narrow down. I would say on average, we probably have on a 7-day hunt, 20 to 25 hours of footage, of actual footage. And we've got to narrow that down to less than an hour.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. You have to go through and watch all of that again. And that's if you've filmed it. Now you take 9 different camera guys sending everything to one person. He has no idea what they saw. He has no idea what action they got into. John had to watch all of that footage and then take notes and then pull out the key pieces for each day to put that together. And just the amount of time and energy and effort, the poor guy's eyeballs probably were about to burn out from staring at his monitor, but he did it. And to his credit, kept the energy. I mean, he was still finding the exciting stuff and putting effort into it and making it, it didn't just taper off at the end like, okay, I'm burned out, we're done. It was good through the end. But with all that being said, that was probably a little more work than we want to burden John with again. But we'll be doing something similar. One of the comments we got was it just felt like it bounced around too much. It felt like, you've got 7 teams, you've got a 45-minute episode. We're getting 5 or 6 minutes with each team. We don't get any of their highlight. We're just getting the highlight reel. We don't get to learn about the struggles. You aren't showing them, how they're facing adversity and what they're doing during the downtime, how they're overcoming some of those struggles. So I think we're going to reduce the overall number of teams, but still keep a team concept where we're, bouncing back and forth between a handful of teams each day and still do a day by day, probably an 8-day period again. The episode lengths will be just as long, if not maybe even a little longer, so that we can spend more time with each of those groups. And then we've got, other projects, the Outfitters for Hope hunt that we do. My Colorado hunt, we'll probably do something, either a day-by-day feature with it or something like we did with Alaska. So a lot of cool stuff coming for Destination Elk for sure. We don't have all the wrinkles ironed out, but we have at least a rough draft.
Yeah. Well, it's fun stuff. I really enjoyed watching it. And, when you're out there filming, there's a little bit of I wonder what's going on there. I wonder what those guys are having for luck. Because I knew how bad we were sucking it. but, well, wherever you go, there's a place. I'm just reading what RMEF is funding for large landscape projects this year. Crazy the number of projects. There are 19 projects that they funded in 2021 for habitat improvement. Like I'm talking like large landscape ones. And then what they're going to fund this year. Holy cow. Wyoming, Washington, Utah, Oregon, New Mexico, Montana, Idaho, Arizona. Oof. And then there's another one about Colorado. Yeah.
Well, it's just, we're seeing the post-COVID, effects of, hey, we're able to have banquets now. We're able to raise more money that got shut down for a year and a half or 2 years there. And now we're seeing not only the opportunity, but I think most of us as elk hunters are hungry to go and be at those events and interact with each other and support conservation. And so that is just a reminder that if you're not a member of the Elk Foundation, you should be. And if you are, you find the banquet close to you and go support the local chapter and have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking just at Arizona when you drill into it. Arizona, between RMEF and the partner funding, $2,098,000 for dirt tanks, for water source upgrade, for landscape. I'm just reading what it falls under. A lot of them are water there. Pinyon juniper encroachment. It just, and that's just one state. And so they're doing a lot of great stuff. So if you get a chance, I would plead to you to become a member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and all the good work they do for the things that we love. So what else we got, Corey? We've only been at it for an hour and 5 minutes. That's what they say. The audience is saying only?
Only?
Come on, man. Yeah.
Let me go. Are you going to talk about anything fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Do we have anything fun to talk about?
I could bore them with details from Nevada shed hunting, but it was so bad that I've scheduled 4 more days next week to go back down and see if I can make it better.
I saw on your Instagram channel that you flew into someplace shed hunting. You're getting out of hand with this shed hunting stuff. I mean,
well, I'm trying to get away from people.
If you just hang them in trees, you wouldn't have to fly and drive to all these places.
I'd probably find so many more too if I wasn't actually looking for them.
Yeah. Do you have a shed hunting chapter in your University of Elk Hunting course?
I don't.
Oh, that's such top secret knowledge. You're not willing.
I was going to say there's some things that you just don't give up.
Are you still giving people a discount if they use the Elk Talk Podcast?
Absolutely.
What is it? Elk Talk?
Elk
is that
Talk.
The promo code?
Yep. Okay. Elk Talk. All one word. Save $20 on the University of Elk Hunting. So just go to elk101.com. Yep.
Oh, there you go. I will tell you, folks, there is no place out there where you will be able to get as much elk hunting information as Corey's University of Elk Hunting. There's some things that are just a fact, Corey. It's not bragging, right? What did the one basketball player say? It's not being cocky if you can do it.
I hadn't heard that one.
No,
who was it that said that?
I can't remember who that was. But anyhow.
Well, we were in Nevada the other day. We got snowed out and we got forced into a $49 hotel. And the NBA playoffs were on and the Warriors were playing. And I'm a huge Steph Curry fan, but they lost that night. John Morant had 47 points, and it was one of the most impressive basketball performances I've seen. And he did it with one eye. He got poked in the eye and couldn't see out of one of the eyes. But this time of year is tough for me to watch basketball. I take in March Madness and the NCAA, but then shed season and it rolls into bear hunting, and so I don't get to watch a lot of NBA games. But.
Yeah, I'm rolling out on my first bear hunt on Monday for 5 days here in Montana.
Nice.
So if I find any elk antlers, I'll hang them up in the tree.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah. It was funny. Marcus is like you when it comes to shed antlers. He brought one to the office last fall and it has disappeared. And you would swear that he lost his computer or something, or his cell phone, or someone stole his car. I'm like, it's just a shed antler. Get back to work. He's like looking in the bathroom, tearing the cupboards, opening the refrigerator, looking for a shed antler. It's like, you guys, those of you who look for shed antler, you're wired differently. Well, okay, I'm probably wired differently. It's probably and
I recognize it. There's just some of us that I don't know if we got deprived of Easter egg hunting when we were little, and this is our way of making up for it. I don't know exactly what it is, but man, there is something that drives me over the next ridge, just hoping to find something somebody else hasn't laid their hands on yet. And I think that's, you had mentioned something about, you'll do anything for an antler. And it's like, it's not the antler that drives me. It's the adventure. And the antler is just the vehicle to get me on the adventure, I think. And, you mentioned we flew into the backcountry and got dropped off with alpaca rafts and hiked in 10 miles from the backcountry airstrip and shed hunted and then rafted out. And I'd never done that before. I'd never flown in for sheds. I'd never, I took a raft across rivers and across creeks before, but I'd never gone down whitewater in them with sheds in them and everything. And it is a ton of fun. I'm going to do that more this summer just for no reason other than to go up and float down some rapids in a little one-man inflatable raft. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Do you have a promo code so people can save money on their alpaca raft?
I don't, but I understand that they can use Randy, I think.
Yeah,
that's one I use.
I didn't know if you had one or not.
I don't know. I used the promo code Randy when I ordered my alpaca raft, and I love them.
We don't want anyone to pay full retail, so that's why we do all this promo code stuff. So, you floating down a rapids in full runoff with an alpaca raft full of shed elk antlers. That if I had to put together a picture dictionary, and where it said "fool," that's it. I'd use that picture for the definition of.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it really. I'm apprehensive a little bit at first because I hadn't done it before, and I don't know how these things are going to handle. But they handled so good in those rapids. We took rope, and first couple great big sets of rapids, we were kind of tethering our raft through it and letting it go down through, and we were walking the bank, and I got to one and thought, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give this a try. Went through it just flawlessly, and after that, it was like, man, here we go. But
well, and if you go to Alpaca's website, they show some people doing some really serious whitewater with their rafts. I'm like, nope, I don't need that. My dog paddling skills aren't that good. So
that was the worst part. Was I took a wetsuit, so we packed in a wetsuit and everything. I mean, it's like you said, it's spring runoff. It's cold. I didn't know the difference between a wetsuit and a dry suit. I now know because John had a dry suit on and I had a wetsuit on. You get wet in a wetsuit.
Right.
Yeah, it's just an extra layer of insulation, but you're still soaking wet. I was soaked. It rained on us most of the way down. It was we got out at dark, and I think the temperature was about 38, 39 degrees. So that part of it, I'm going to wait till summer to try it again, but
did you get any? Did you find any antlers?
So here's the beauty: we fly in to a backcountry airstrip. We hike 10 miles. We take rafts to get them out, and somebody had already beat us in there.
Oh man!
Yeah,
all that.
I don't know how
just
they
for
got
the
in
adventure.
There. Yep. But I found. I think I brought out 14 elk antlers, only 3 of which were from this year. But I found 2 giant sets from last year that were. Great big Idaho bulls. So it was fun.
Now we know where Corey's going to be hunting this fall.
Nope, that's 10 miles. That's too. I mean, you could pack them out with the alpaca rafts, and I ordered my raft based on one person with 4 elk quarters in there, and figured out what that weight was.
Do you guys who do this shed antler hunting, do you ever use it for like a little bit of a? I don't know if scouting is the right word, but a little bit of recon and intel.
Yeah, there's certain areas. A lot of these areas, the elk migrate so far that tracking down a particular bull is tough. But I mean, in the spring, we flew back in March just to see where the elk were concentrated. And that definitely opens my eyes to, hey, there's a pile of elk right here. Where are they coming from? And so then you go back and look at, 3D imagery, and it's like, okay, everything flows right into here from this mountain. All those elk have to be dispersed on this mountain. So there has to be a huge population of elk here. So it definitely helps. I know, in states, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, there are people that will shed hunt and find a specific bull and then go hunt that bull in the fall. But in these mountain states, that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I go hunt whatever elk gets in my path. So for me, the foolishness to think that I would find one that I saw on the winter range. Yeah. Good luck with that, Randy. But well, Corey, I'm going to let you go because we got a lot of work to get done yet today.
Yep.
And hopefully the audience hangs around for the next podcast. We haven't run them off yet. So.
Man, well, I was just going to say I appreciate the the level of research that you're putting in on that. I mean, just what you shared in 45 minutes on this episode has me excited to see what all you've got coming out. That's just real information. That's helpful stuff. So I know it takes hours and hours to compile that so that we can digest it in an hour. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably going to be worth what someone pays for it.
Well, like I say, we've got a money back guarantee right here on the podcast. So
yeah, for sure. Well, you have a great day, Corey.
You too. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.